Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old, a show about all things aging well. My guest today is Dr. Nir Barzilai, and he is the founding director of the Institute for Aging Research at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and the director of the Paul F. Glenn Center for the Biology of Human Aging Research and of the National Institute of Health's Nathan Schock Centers. Welcome, Dr. Barzilai.
Thank you very much. By the way, it's inaccurate how you describe me. I have new centers and other centers, and all I can say is you probably took my bio from like 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
All he tells me is how old I am. That's all. But it's fine.
Okay, well, you've got a lot on your plate, and anybody that wants to go look you up can find out all the
Exactly.
things you're doing. So all we're talking about now, everywhere I go, not just because I'm in the field, it's just all everybody's talking about is aging well and living longer. So I believe that it's driven by somewhat by fear of old age and its perceived irrelevancy, and of course, the human fear of dying. So my question to you is, how did studying aging come to the forefront in recent history?
Terrific. And it's a good question because actually people don't realize by life expectancy in our human evolution, 100,000 years or more, we argue, life expectancy was between 20 and 30. It's only in the last 150 years, and thanks to science, that we started making an advance, right? And kind of around the world, most of the world, life expectancy is close to 80. There's striking differences, but close to 80. And as we made this progress, and by the way, this progress was made by, harnessing the agriculture and cleaning the water and building sewers and having vaccination. It was all preventive medicine. But as we made this advance, we reached the age of 60, and after the age of 60, we start getting diseases that were not part of the human evolution. Okay, so if you ask, hey, prostate cancer, why evolution didn't manage that? Because nobody died from prostate cancer, right? It just became later on. So this is the situation. But here is what I want to say. There is a biology for aging because we know who's old and who's young. It's clear that you're so much younger than me, for example. Okay, people know who's old and who's young. But people know more than that. There's a biological age and a chronological age. And by your friends or by your parents' friend that some age rapidly and some age slowly. And that means, to me, it meant that if that's what happened, it means that we can do something about aging because this is the biology that we see, okay? And fast forward, we discovered that this biology is what drives diseases. So it's not that we get old, we get diseases, and then we get older. No, it's this biology that we can see on the cells is what drives aging. And we simply showed and proved that if we target this biology before we get diseases, it delays or prevent or reverse even diseases. So the revolution, okay, and that's what I'm here to talk about this revolution is we can spend time at being healthy rather than spend time in treating our diseases. By the way, I noticed I didn't answer your question. I said what I wanted to say.
Nobody ever answers my questions. It's totally fine.
Your husband?
My husband never answers my questions. So.
Okay.
But you know what? That's where we get the real meat of the matter. Was science always looking at aging or the lifespan? Is it something that's always been studied, or is this just driven by the worldwide population getting older?
Look, the fountain of youth, right? There's stories about the fountain of youth. There's stories about immortality. Now, I don't think it was driven by science, although it was science fictions were written about that.
Mhm.
It was driven by people, by the way, a little bit like me, that were looking for some of them immortalist. I'm not immortalist, but immortality, or looking at aging and saying we have to do something about it. The science came later. I'm kind of one of the first that started to learn the biology of aging and to prove that you can do something about it. It's much later. And it's still a combination of people who are prophets and they believe that they found the fountain of youth and stuff like that, and the what we call geroscientists, the people who are doing aging research and are actually proving and expanding the field and learning more mechanisms and providing more drugs. And I'm very optimistic that your viewers are going to benefit, and maybe they are already, from what we found so far.
So, what you're doing now is you're able to determine the hallmarks and the biomarkers of aging. But how variable are these among our species?
You mean our and
Yes,
human?
yeah, let me clarify. Among humans, yeah.
Okay. Okay, because there's commonality and difference between species, and we do,
Yes, yes,
a
yeah,
lot of what I'm doing is in rodents, right?
yes.
Um, so let me answer in a forward-looking way. There's a lot of biomarkers that are out there, and you can purchase them. And a lot of them are good in determining your biological age rather than your chronological age. Um, the problem is that this is not what we need. We need a biomarker that will change when you do something about your aging. If you exercise, if you eat differently, if you sleep, right? If you take a drug or a supplement, you want to see in 3 months that you're getting younger. Those biomarkers, I'm leading a big project on those biomarkers, and we hope to be ready for that in 18 months. So you can now get some index of biological age. By the way, I measure 10 of those biomarkers, and I'm anywhere 20 years younger than my age to 4 years older than my age. And it immediately shows you the problem. And maybe each one of those biomarkers is telling me something, okay? But I don't have the one that I really want. I want to change something and I want to see that it's helpful.
This is an interesting question. So the biomarkers would be blood test and seeing your cholesterol levels, your liver enzymes, your body fat percentage, your heart function, your lung function, all those the biomarkers, just for clarification, throughout the body that indicate your level of wellness, and you take it a step further, indicating the level of how well you're aging. So, what if you have great? We have a hereditary cholesterol problem, so I have horrible cholesterol, but I work out 6 days a week. I've run 20 marathons. I'm a nutrition teacher. I feel like I eat beautifully, and I get these, you're old for your age because of my cholesterol. So can that one bad thing in your body throw the whole system off and make you age faster? Or
So,
are you aging piece by piece, I guess is what I'm
so,
asking.
so that's a good question. And look, to deal with your cholesterol, the most important thing is to actually take a drug or
Ah,
one of the drugs for that. Okay, that's really the most important thing. Look, cholesterol is a disease-specific problem.
okay.
And the treatment for cholesterol, if you look at Lipitor, for example, unlike other drugs that we have, if you give Lipitor to animals, they're not going to live longer. So it does not affect the biology of aging.
Interesting.
So this is an example of a very important biomarker for a specific disease. And yes, you don't want to die from heart disease. In fact, I'm telling people what I'm doing has two stages. First of all, you have to get there, okay? Don't die from high cholesterol and heart disease, okay? We can manage that. Don't die from cancer. And then we can do something about that. But we have to distinguish between what's aging, what's gerotherapeutic, therapeutic to prevent aging, what is geroprotection, and it's very different than this example of cholesterol that is important for one disease. And people have diseases, but not all the drugs can save them, but they're not going to make them younger.
So that's what my question is to you. It brings into that discussion, we have it here. We a little bit, I included it in the Q&A a little bit, health span and lifespan. So we're all looking for, regardless of our lifespan, that we have a full, healthy life all the way to the end. So do you just go kaput and fall asleep and die in your sleep?
Yeah, look,
Right?
we're
Like it, how does that end of life is so different for so many people. Some of it lingers, some of it happens very quickly. I know you can't answer why everybody dies and when they die and how they die, but tell us how you're trying to marry lifespan and health span.
okay. I want to just make one statement up front.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in health span. Okay. I don't know when you die, but I don't want you to be sick. Okay.
Yes, yes.
One day. Um, but the mechanism of health span and lifespan are the same mechanism. If I can prevent diseases, then you'll die later, right?
Okay.
So, to a certain extent, on a scientific base, I'm not sure we can distinguish between those two. But let me exemplify what I'm saying. So, I have a study with centenarians. I have over 850, 100 years old in variety of my studies. And when we started the study throughout today, we asked a simple question. So, do centenarians get sick when everybody gets sick after the age of 60 and now they are sick for longer? Or is their lifespan that is extended and health span, does it go together? And the answer is that it goes together. And we published about that.
Okay.
Not only it goes together, they're 20, 30 years healthier than a generation of their children. By the way, my centenarians, when they were born, life expectancy was 50. So they actually doubled their lifespan.
Right. Right.
Okay? So now they live 20, 30 years longer than their son or daughter-in-law, healthier. Okay, but this is not the point. I mean, it's very important that they have health span and lifespan, but they have what we call a contraction of morbidity. They're sick very little time at the end of their life. We're sick years, and they are sick weeks at the end of their lives. And actually, this was confirmed by the CDC, the Central of Disease Control, told us, looked at the medical cost in the last 2 years of life of somebody who dies over the age of 100. It was third of the medical cost of those who died in their 70s. So we started talking about longevity dividend in the sense that if we can extend health span and lifespan, we can maybe save the economy. Now, there is a professor, Andrew Scott, he's in London Business School, and he said, guys, you're out of your mind. You don't understand what you're saying. I said, what's wrong? He said, so you're telling me that those guys are not in the hospital. But that's one part. If they're not at the hospital, where are they? They're traveling, they're shopping, they're buying houses for their grandchildren. They have an economical value that he says it's in the order of $36 trillion a year. So, in fact, what we're doing, and by the way, politicians in the United States have recognized that.
Mm-hmm.
Even this administration can hurt everything else, but not aging. They understand that one way of doing good and also saving the economy is targeting the aging and having people be healthy for longer, and we can do it.
Is there a glut of gerontologists? I know that it's not a focus a lot of medical students want to go into.
So I'm the president of the Academy for you would like the name Health and Lifespan Research.
Ah,
Okay.
mhm.
And we have now the 86 people who are the best scientists and also the leader in the field. We're probably underrepresenting because we started recently and we're growing not as rapidly, on purpose, not as rapidly as we can. Um, but it really tells you that there's a lot of geroscientists, a lot of them are PhD. Um, in our PhD program in Einstein, and by the way, I'm a professor of medicine and genetics at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. At Einstein, 50% of the graduate students want to go to geroscience lab, okay, to the lab.
Really,
Okay.
really.
Aging is so hot for
Yeah,
young
yeah.
people.
Good,
Okay.
good. I'm glad.
And it's not because I understand it, because when I was young, nobody wanted to talk about aging. And for me, it was the major biological thing. When I went to medical school, I learned that you can measure cholesterol and glucose, and other things. And I said, okay, but put 100 people in front of me. I'm not going to know who has high cholesterol or not, but I know who's young and who's old. Okay. So that became the most important thing. I think young people understand. My friends, when I was young, looked at their grandparents and said, hey, what happened to them? Where did they come from? And I looked at my grandparent and I knew that's where I'm going, so what's going on?
That's funny you say that. I say that often. People really avoid it. And I loved being around my grandparents and hearing their stories and learning about how they got there. And that's gotten worse, but hopefully it's getting better now that younger people are embracing that. Plus, we have such youthful grandparents now, right? People who are so much
Right.
more youthful. I think I'm jumping ahead, but I want to ask you this now that it's on my mind. Are we aging better because we know better, or is this evolution?
No, there's no evolution in what we're doing. Look, evolution takes generations to
Okay.
change us. No, it's not thing. So what we have done with the environment. I'll give you maybe an example and build on that.
Okay.
Um, my grandfather got a heart disease and died when he was 68. My father got a heart disease when he was 68, but he had a triple bypass and he lived to be 84.
Wow.
So you see how the genetic, when my grandfather died, there was no, you didn't know what to do with heart attacks. You didn't know how to save them and you didn't know to do bypass, right? So it was very different. Medical progress has been really immense and allowed us to survive disease and also start thinking about what can make our aging better. Um, it's not enough, of course, in my mind, but that's what they've done. When you look at generations and you take, let's say, people who are 70 today and 35 years ago, and then 70 years ago, um, it's almost a 35 years difference, right? The people who are 35 years younger than us look like us.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think people realize that. Many reasons for that, but it has to be with interaction with the environment. However, I also want to say that because our lifespan increases, we're doing something right. Okay, there's no doubt that we're doing something right. But our environment also contributes wrong things, and we're kind of behind them.
Mhm.
I've been reading recently about microplastics, right? And oh God, you know, are we using too much plastics? Are we warming things with plastics? Do we drink too much water in plastic bottle? And what does it mean for us? So this is, and I don't know the answers, but there are many things that we're doing with the environment. Some of them we know, when we use chemicals for fruits and vegetables and so we know that they're harmful. We know that cigarette smoking was harmful and we dealt with it, but we making an advance, but we don't know in the meantime what new thing we're doing and it's going to harm us.
I want to say something that I hadn't planned on talking about in this conversation, but one of the things is my father developed out of control diabetes and neuropathy in his 60s. And so we outfitted his house with plastic so that he wouldn't hurt himself, that he wouldn't drop a coffee cup, a glass cup, or a glass plate. And so I'm on the fence about that, that I do think too much plastic is harmful, but it's also safe for older people to outfit their homes with plastic coffee cups and plastic plates. So sometimes you have to outweigh the advantages and the disadvantages of what's available to us. It's that age-old question: technology is fabulous, but is
You're
it us?
you're absolutely you're first of all, you didn't know. Okay,
Yeah,
let's start
yeah.
with okay, you didn't know, so you don't have to feel guilty.
I
If
don't. I
I
don't.
don't
It's
accept.
funny
Okay.
enough, I don't. I feel like that was the best thing for him because he was
So
dropping glass plates and he couldn't feel it in his feet. We couldn't allow that. Yeah.
so we decided something simple. We'll store food in plastic container. We'll put the food after it's cold to a
Right.
plastic container,
Right.
and we won't warm the plastic containers.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm telling you what I've decided
Oh,
based
it's
on no
great.
data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there's always reasonable way to deal with things that you fear. But you can't be fearful all your life.
Absolutely. Dr. Barzilai, you discovered the first longevity gene in humans. Does it cross all ethnic backgrounds? What is your research showing?
Um, so the first gene that I discovered, and by the way, when we say longevity genes, it's not that all of us have uh, the same number in genes, but some of us have an extra gene.
Okay.
When
Okay.
when it's a longevity gene, it's one of the genes that is impacted, and it has function, and the function is slows the aging prospect. Okay, that's what longevity gene, and we discovered um, a gene that's called CETP, cholesterol ester transfer protein. And we validated that this gene was associated in some, but not all populations. But the reason it wasn't in all population, that's why when you have one SNP, it doesn't say anything. For example, Japanese don't have the mutation that I found in the gene. They have another mutation.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because
But
they have
what
they're noted for having a long lifespan.
Right. But what's common to this gene is if it has effects, you can actually measure it without measuring the gene. You measure your good cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol. So I'm going to ask you, you have longevity in your family.
Yes.
Do you know what's your HDL cholesterol? Your good
Yes, I
cholesterol.
follow it very closely.
And can you reveal the
Yeah,
number?
yeah, my HDL is 84.
Okay. So if you at your age have HDL of 84, I suspect that you have longevity gene. Okay, this is common to our offspring of centenarians, and its association with health span and lifespan.
Wow. So this is where it gets into the bigger picture. Is you got to look at the bigger picture. It isn't any one thing. Can we manipulate our lifespan and health span just by lifestyle choices?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, and I think for every age. Now, I'm not talking over the age 50 or 60, but for every age, um, exercise, um, diet, sleep, and social connectivity has underlying pinning, have biological underlying, I should say. Okay. Um, and each one of them can be maximized. Actually, I want to take away the word maximize, it's optimize.
Optimize. Okay.
Okay. If you have an 80-year-old guy that walks 7,000 steps, you're not telling him to write marathon now. Okay.
Right.
That's
Right.
maximizing. You have to
Right.
optimize it.
Right.
Um, and 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 we know a lot about how to optimize that, but I would say that the most important thing that maximize it also is very personal, especially when it comes to diet. And I think you know that very well. Not
Yes.
every diet is good for everyone. I'm always saying that, with vegetarian diet, one of the problems for some people who go vegetarian and now they have less protein, they take more carbohydrates and they become obese, and they really cancel every benefit
Right.
that vegetarian have. So you have to find your own diet. Luckily, if you're obese, there are also drugs. Those drugs are gerotherapeutics. Those drugs will affect obesity drives aging. Okay, obesity drives aging, but some of the drugs have effects even beyond obesity and protect from variety of age-related diseases.
That's what I'm hearing about, because the old conundrum, when I graduated college in the 80s, we had the 4 food groups, and you were diabetic because you ate too much sugar. That's what everybody believed, right? Very different than the way we approach it today. And so the drugs are interesting. I think the jury's still out on some of them, but it's very, very interesting to see that.
So, the problem with jury is that they're not people who can always judge. Okay? Not only that, they can be manipulated,
Yeah.
right? How much time did it get the jury to believe on genetic data, or I mean genetic data to identify blood, right? And say, hey, that's your blood, right? So even if the jury's out there, the data is overwhelming. And when I say overwhelming, the data that we need, that we're using to announce something, is, first of all, there are hallmarks of aging. That's cellular mechanisms. And we want to see if the drugs affect the cellular mechanism of aging, one thing. Second thing, we want to know that if we give them to animal, they live longer and healthier. Aging, unlike diseases, aging is very common to all creatures.
Okay.
The skin, the hair, the skeletal, they get other diseases, okay? Right. But it's all driven by aging. And we can stop their aging and we stop their diseases. So this is what we call preclinical studies.
Okay.
The clinical studies are, we take a drug, and the drug was, by the way, designed to a certain disease. And we did studies in a certain disease, and we found out, hey, we gave it to this disease, but it actually prevents the other disease, and then another disease, several diseases. And hey, we give this drug for a certain disease, but it prevents mortality, in overall mortality, not disease-specific mortality. And if those 4 things will happen, okay, we can say that those are gerotherapeutics. Those are things that really have shown not only to work on cells and animals, but also to target aging in humans and prevent diseases and mortality, or increase health span and lifespan.
I have a 2-pronged question about this. Okay, so we have help out there. It's wonderful. So 2 things. Every little bit counts. Like if I'm doing 7,000 steps a day as opposed to 10, that's better than doing nothing, right? We all know that. Okay. I'm on and I've said this forever, and I've been every level of vegetarian. 30 vegetables a week is the new buzzword now. And I say, if you break it down, let's say you have 3-4 vegetables a day times 7, you're already at 28 vegetables a week, right? You've already fruits and vegetables, you're reaching that. So the media will tell us that you can never have alcohol again. You have to eat only vegetables, and you have to walk this amount. Talk to me about the little tiny effort that people make, that if somebody goes for a 10-minute walk after dinner every night, or walks to, takes a little walk in the neighborhood, they're not running a marathon, they're not competing. Is that still very effective in our longevity and wellness?
So as a scientist, I'll tell you, I cannot really answer your question with data. I can talk about it. Okay. So let me take, for example, supplements. Okay. And people are saying we'll take several supplements, right? And each one maybe is doing something, and we add one of the top of the other, maybe we get more. So there's a study that was published in one of our important journals, JAMA, that followed 7 million people over 12 years. And it showed that people who are taking multi-supplements have an increase in mortality. Okay. Now, this was shocking to us because people who take supplements usually also exercise,
Right.
and they don't smoke and they don't drink. And the point is, we know nothing about supplements. You can buy supplements with any hope you want. There's no promise in them, but any hope you hope. And we know nothing about it. That's why, in my mind, we should there's enough drugs that were developed during the years that will target your aging. It's going to be much better than taking supplements unless people will test what supplements are doing. And this goes back to your question, because there's no study that takes 30 vegetables and show that it's better than two, okay, with some outcomes. Okay, we kind of adopt things as they go. We adopt things because they make sense to us. But the truth is, we don't know. Maybe it's like supplements. Maybe having 30 different vegetables is harmful. By the way, I don't think so, okay? But the point is that we don't know. And we have to be careful. I call your viewers and everybody that looks at the web as an influence, just ask a simple question. Was there a clinical study that took a group and a control and gave one the drug or the supplement and one placebo and looked at outcomes that are significant, not mortality probably, but, something else, weight loss, or, did they look at some outcomes that were statistically significant? If you cannot easily find that, it probably is not existent. And I would say this is just hope. It might be right, it might be false, but I wouldn't take it and mainly because if I take that, I'll take another thing, and then I'm really antagonistic.
It's such an interesting point because I know one of the things that's coming up now with aging is vitamin D deficiency. And we go to a internist cardiologist, and he said that we need to supplement with vitamin D, that's essential for your health as you age, because so many people are vitamin D deficiency.
So vitamin D is a complex issue, and in the sense that on one hand, when we take supplement, supplement in my mind is you measure something, and if it's low, you supplement it.
Right.
That's not how supplements are used. You're taking it. You have no idea if you need.
Taking truckloads in a giant bowl every morning. Yeah.
Right. That's not a supplement. The only outstanding is vitamin D. And I have a lot to say about vitamin D, including that my vitamin D is the lowest you'll ever see. But vitamin D has not helped many people. Okay. It helps mainly people who have osteoporosis, severe osteoporosis. So while low vitamin D was associated with many things, okay, the major thing, were there clinical studies giving vitamin D? Yes, there were a lot. Did they show any effect? No. Okay. So I don't know why your doctor is supplementing vitamin D. It's something that doctors are doing, but I don't think they're aware. And maybe because the vitamin D is low. But vitamin D low can be because of other things. Okay. So I think my vitamin D is low because my bones are actually very dense, so I don't need calcium. So my vitamin D, it's an endocrine system, it's low on purpose.
Interesting.
Okay. So vitamin D is an example of something that, hey, you think you should supplement that, but if you do, it doesn't change anything. Look, with aging, when you're less in the sun, you have less vitamin D, and you also have more diseases. That doesn't mean there's a cause and effect relationship.
Right. I want to talk about something that I think is near and dear to you, that magic pill, what everybody's looking for to make aging go away, right? Metformin. And this was a drug designed to control diabetes, and it's now showing promise as an anti-aging drug. Tell us how that works.
So, first of all, I want to tell you it's kind of the other way around. It was used for aging in the 1920s to the 1950s. It's an extract of the French lilac, but it's modulated, so it's drug. So you still need a prescription.
Okay.
By the way, it's the cheapest drug in the formulary of any country. Okay, it costs nothing to have metformin. It's generic. It's very cheap, and it was used for osteoarthritis, for flu, for other things. And then it was discovered that people who had diabetes, their glucose was lower. So it was hijacked to diabetes. But what happened in diabetes when metformin was compared to other diabetic drugs, insulin, sulfonylurea, other things, people notice that people on metformin had less cardiovascular disease, they had less cancers, they had less cognitive function, they had less mortality. And so metformin presented itself after clinical studies confirming that it was an aging drug.
Would you take metformin if you didn't have diabetes and maybe even microdosing just as a supplement?
No, microdosing doesn't work usually. Okay, certainly not in example of metformin. In fact, you probably need, I think it's variable between people, but we cannot measure it. But I would tell people to take the full dose if they can.
Okay.
And yes, look, first of all, young people should not take metformin. In fact, metformin can be harmful for them. Okay, not everything that's good for old is good for young. Also, not everything that's good for young, good for old.
Right.
Back to the cholesterol example, you need a lot of cholesterol when you're young to build your cells and brain and gonads. But if you have high cholesterol metabolism when you're old, you're going to clog your coronaries, right? So it's called an antagonistic pleiotraphy.
Okay.
Metformin is a drug that is not good for young people, okay, for reasons I'm not going to go into. But metformin is good for, what's old? It depends because everybody has its biological age, but after the age of 50. Let's put it this way.
I was going to say, pick a number and then,
pick a number, 50. After the age of 50 is when trials have been done.
Okay.
Actually, the average age in trials were usually 65. But let's say after the age of 50, if you feel old, metformin is probably a good drug for you because not only it affects all the hallmarks of aging, but it affects variety of diseases. So, people think, oh, it's for diabetes, it improves metabolism. But for example, during COVID, people who were on metformin had half the hospitalization, half the mortality, and 60% less long COVID. Okay?
So, wow, that's significant.
So metformin affects immunity and inflammation.
Okay.
And then I said you have to look for clinical trials, right? So there was a clinical trials, and in the clinical trials, it was shown that metformin prevent half the hospitalization, half the death, and half of the long COVID. Okay? So all of a sudden, metformin is for long COVID. Metformin is for macular degeneration. Metformin is for, for variety of other diseases of aging.
But that's nipping it in the bud. That's taking it before those diseases take off, right? That's
we want people to take it before disease, but when you get your first disease, it's not that the aging stopped. The aging continues. You'll get a second disease.
Right.
So to use it as secondary prevention, it's even more so. If you're, in my mind, if you're 60 and you already had an age-related disease, you should take metformin to prevent the next one.
And with that, you talk about hyperbaric chambers, which is inhaling pure oxygen. Tell us about that and its effect on aging. And that is one of those, I don't know what to call them, maybe a shyster. They're all selling this stuff, as you know, all over the world, all over the internet. these things that are going to reverse your age and prevent you from aging. You know some of the characters in that play. But tell me about the hyperbaric chamber. Seems to be an interesting development.
So the way you presented it is the way I heard it first. Just a minute. We're taking antioxidants, right? We think they're important. And now you're putting us for 3 months every day except weekend for an hour or two with oxygen.
Hmm?
Doesn't sound even safe. Okay. And when I heard it, I went to people and I said, explain to me. And they explained to me, and I understood so well that I actually purchased chambers to my rodents. So I'm doing experiment in rodents to see what is the anti-aging effect. So I'll tell you just 2 things as simply as I can. When you're old, you're losing not large vessels, but very small vessels. By the age of 60, 70, we lost 30% of our small vessels. That means that we have cells all over the body that maybe they're not dead, but they're not doing well either. The oxygen is not only oxygen, it's not 100% oxygen, it's under pressure. And under pressure, the oxygen diffuses from the vessels to the tissues, to the cells. And it really, cells that haven't seen oxygen for a while are rejuvenating now. Okay? So that's one way to look at it. The second thing to look at it, which is even more strange to me, actually factors that come during hypoxia, when you don't have oxygen, are really strong longevity factors. So how do I reconcile the fact that longevity is actually because we don't have enough, not that we have too much? And really what happens is when we do this oxygen treatment, and oxygen go to the cells, and then we stop it, our body feels that relatively they don't have enough oxygen, and then they actually produces those factors. We fool the body with that. So
Wow.
those are at least 2 mechanisms to show you that it is. But more important, there are clinical studies, good clinical studies, that show that have variety of really incredible effects. The most important in aging is effect on cognitive decline.
Does that replicate at a level of altitude as well? That the oxygen is, they use the word thinner air.
Well, then you have relative hypoxia,
Yes.
and hypoxic factors might be important. It's true that Denver is the state with the highest lifespan.
That's what I was going to ask you. So people living at higher altitude age slower is what I heard.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to know because people in higher altitude are tribe that is genetically distinct from others. Okay, so you don't know what got
Yeah,
them there.
yeah.
But the example of Colorado that got influx and outflux of people from all over the place, and still their life expectancy is higher,
Higher.
is part of it.
Is it the highest in the United States to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We all should take a trip, a long extended trip to Denver and up. But that's not safe for some older people. That's the catch 22.
I want to say about that also for drugs. No matter what you come with, you're going to save 100 and kill 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what happened to RFK with the COVID vaccine, right? He was, it saved 60 million people, but he knows too that he's sure it's the vaccination. Okay. We have to be better at choosing the 100 and not choosing the 3, right? And we can do it, right? We'll have help from AI. We'll be able to do it much better, but we still have to save 100.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Barzilai, is it possible to reverse your age by, let's say, injecting young tissue or blood transfusions into our bodies in an effort to rejuvenate? The same way, maybe like stem cells.
So we have a core in my center that actually gives so we take rats or mice, rodents, and we take young and old, and we connect them by surgery in the side of the body so that they share some blood supply. They exchange like 20 times their blood supply during a day. And what happens? The old becomes younger. Okay, so there are things that are going in the blood that are actually rejuvenating. Now, there's a lot of things that are being done now in humans, and I can say it's very uncomfortable for me to say it because it sounds terrible. Okay. But that doesn't mean it's not true. What we're trying to do, and I have part of an effort in that, is trying to find more specifically which are those factors. And maybe we can give them without taking the blood of your children, right? Or something like that.
How has studying aging affect you and your outlook on life?
So first of all, I myself want to be healthy, and I'm doing a lot to stay healthy, mainly by interacting with the environment and also taking metformin.
Oh, you are? Okay.
But I want to tell you, it's something more profound. And it's not only because we want people to live healthier and die one day, okay? But it's much greater than this is big enough, but it's much greater in the sense that people who are undergoing chemotherapy and radiation, they age quickly, and they need help. Women after breast cancer, children get heart attacks at the age of 35 if they have radiation of chemotherapy, so they need help. People with HIV get diseases 10 years before their cohort. People who are disabled. Down syndrome is an aging syndrome. Vegetables and fruits are also subject to aging research people because we want to increase their shelf life. And if we want to go to Mars, we're not going to get there before we solve aging.
Right.
We'll get diseases on the way there, and we're not going to make it back. So I think there's a whole variety of reasons why we should accelerate and start practicing something that will delay our aging, because if we can spend this amount of time on our health, we're going to defeat diseases and things will accelerate and we can live much healthier and for much longer.
It's so wonderful you give us all so much hope, I have to tell you. I want to ask you, what do you like about getting older?
Look, the one thing that really leads for me everything else is the wisdom. Okay, it's the wisdom, and so I have two things. How do we use wisdom of old people? Because we don't. But also, I want to change so many things. I want to reverse so many things. And in my mind, I'm saying, but I don't want to take the wisdom away.
Yeah, of course. We want our brains in our 60s and the bodies of when we were in our 20s. Everybody seems to say that. Dr. Nir Barzilai, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to share your knowledge and your ongoing work with us. It's so much food for thought. What do you recommend is the best way for our listening audience to learn about what you're doing?
I think just my name in the web will get you, some information.
Yeah, we'll put that up when we produce the show. So again, thank you so much, and I wish you a happy, healthy, very, very long
pleasure. Life. Thank you. You really provoked me, so I'm happy.
So I want to thank all of you who are listening. I'm Patricia Greenberg, and for more shows on aging well, please subscribe to this channel. And for more information, you can reach out to me at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Thank you all. Stay well and stay safe.